Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to take another look at some of my favourite Forge World models. This is largely because the last time I did one of these videos, someone pointed out that I'd picked essentially a metric shed load of vehicles and other massive things. And that, in fact, Forge World do indeed do smaller models as well, you know, it doesn't always have to be tanks. What the hell are you doing? So, thought perhaps actually you were right, that list did lack variety in some respects because it was all massive tanks, but then again massive tanks are quality anyway, so is there really a problem? But there are a bunch of very nice smaller models that Forge World also makes, so I thought we'd take a look at those as well. It's been a rough day, let's look at some nice tasty miniatures as a way to cheer ourselves up. Also, it's so goddamn hot, so bored of being hot. That's why there's no camera. I'm like literally horrendously sweating. I look terrible. Anyway, first up, for some of my favourite Forge World models that aren't like assault carriers and so on, this Shadow Spectres Aspect Warrior squad. Now, we talked about the Aspect Warriors like a couple of days ago, about having like new plastic versions would be really nice if that was a thing, and to be honest, I think the Shadow Spectres are some of the nicest looking Aspect Warriors. I mean, of course, they do have the benefit of being somewhat newer than the others, but just the overall design anyway is really, really nice. It's so flowing and graceful. I mean, they've actually managed to make it so that, for the most part, the rocks that they are like hovering over look really natural. They look like they've got like natural poses as they're going over, because they've used the really nice flowing, like the flowing strips of cloth on these to attach them to the bases. It doesn't look really like there's any real point of contact between the bulk of the model and the base it's flying from. It's a really nice way of doing it, and it just gives these guys such a good, like, ethereal kind of feel to them, which is obviously exactly what you want. They are called the Shadow Spectres. You want something phantom-like, and these have all of that. They just look like they float so gracefully, and it's something that I'd like to see applied to the other Aspect Warriors as well, but it just works so well for these guys. Easily one of my favourite like units that Forge World does. This is one of those rare ones where I could see myself being at Warhammer World at some point and picking up a box purely to paint them, just because I like them that much. They just have something about them that is screaming out to be painted. In complete contrast to that is one of my other favourites, which is this lad, the Warboss on bike. It's so good. It's so ludicrous. It's so over the top. It's proper orky is the thing I like the most about it. From the ridiculous, like, arm buzzsaw powered by some sort of belt sander, like, that does not seem like something that would last long in a fight before getting ripped off the arm itself, but you don't care, because it's properly orky. It's totally mad. There's like a little jet engine attached to the back. It's got tiny tracks instead of wheels. It's the kind of ramshackle nonsense that I absolutely love from the Orcs. Now, admittedly, I do like the new vehicles that the Orcs have got, but there is something about this kind of construction, this kind of mad engineering that is just so unmistakably orky, and I absolutely love it. Also, the Orc Warboss's face is pretty good on this as well. I feel like it's a good Games Workshop Orc face without being too cartoony, which is nice. Such a good model. It's so daft. It's so mad. And for another total, I know it's Tau. I know. I did look. Don't dislike the video straight away. Some of the Tau stuff does look good. One of the reasons I like this so much is because it is recognisably Tau, but it has a very different feel to it, I think, than a lot of the other stuff they have. It feels so much more experimental, and the aesthetic is not actually, I would argue, not really 100% 40k in some ways. I can't really put my finger on why, but there is something about this model that just seems very different to a lot of the other stuff that you get in 40k. I mean, it has like the same design hints as all the other Tau stuff, but there's just something about it which does not 100% line up, and I think that's why I like it so much. It's something that stands out. It looks quite unique even amongst Tau stuff, which, to be honest, I think is it's one of those things that's like a bit of a challenge to do. It's like, how do you make something that is recognisably Tau, but also make it look so experimental that it stands out amongst other Tau? It's kind of tricky, but I think they've achieved something interesting with this model. It's another one of those where I would quite like to own it just to own it, but I don't know. I think the Shadow Spectres, like, I think they edge ahead in terms of things I would actually pick up. It is an interesting model, though. I do like it a lot. Can't have Forge World stuff, obviously, without some Deathcore of Krieg. Is there any better? Let's be totally honest. Let's be real. Let's be blunt here. Yeah, Steel Legion is all very good, but is there any better, like, Imperial Guard regiment? Is there, like, the style of these guys is so spot on. It is such a cool mix of properly dated, outdated kind of equipment and look combined with just the right amount of sci-fi, really. This is an army that way back I nearly started. I had a command squad which I actually gave to Warhammer London, thinking about it. I had a Krieg command squad, which I just never got around to painting, because at the time my painting was not good enough. Like, I couldn't even fathom making a start on these guys, because there is so much detail. I feel like there is some models in not just Forge World and Games Workshop as a whole, that just demand a certain respect, and I could not give these models the respect they demanded. I just knew I couldn't paint them to a high enough standard to even attempt it. So I had a command squad for these guys from, like, I want to say I got it in like was it 99? I can't remember. I tweeted the date on the bag, because I found it in the loft, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe they've just sat there for so long. If I ever did go back to starting an Imperial Guard army, which I've toyed with a few times, I had a few ideas, I nearly went for it. I think it was either last year or the year before instead scrapping it all to go for a bit of Emperor's Children, stupid dreadnought nonsense. I think I wouldn't even build my own stuff. I wouldn't even convert things. I think I might just end up doing this one day. Luckily, they sell well enough, they are popular enough, that I don't think there's any chance like Forge World's ever going to drop them, because they are just vastly popular. But they're also incredibly pricey, but then again, they just look so fucking cool. That's what it boils down to. They just look so good, especially in like images like this where it's like fully set up and lit. I don't know, there's just something about them that they've got something that I don't think any other Imperial Guard models have got. And yeah, I love them. I feel like they are essentially timeless, these things. You know, if you saw them on the tabletop in like 20 years time, they wouldn't look dated, they wouldn't look bad, they wouldn't look crap. They would still look fucking great. Speaking of which, something that actually may look a little bit dated now, but still, I have a massive soft spot for this guy, okay? I mean, essentially, it's nothing massively special, let's be honest. He's got a few more reinforcement studs on his armour than most lads, but there is just something about the attitude of this model, and I feel like a lot of it is down to the absurd... what is it? Is it Hunger and Slake? Are those the names of the weapon? I can't remember. I think it's something like that. I have a soft spot for this model just because, even though it's not that complex, even though it's not quite got, you know, the huge level of detail that some of the other stuff has got, even though it doesn't look experimental or anything like that, it's just a Terminator with a admittedly slightly cooler helmet and a set of ridiculous chain fist power claws. It's still just so good. Lightning claws, sorry, not power claws. It's just so good. It's so good. The little touches with the little shark fins on the claws themselves, just little things like that, just properly make this into such a good model. And I bought this model along with the Legion Command, I think it was, but that had was it Legion Praetors? It was the Legion Praetors that had the guy in Cataphractii Terminator armour and another guy in Mark III, I believe. And I bashed them together to make the Chapter Master for my Scarlords. That was a bloody expensive kit bash, but it was so worth it. I took the arms off this guy and I put them on the Cataphractii armour, and I even got his head. Had to wedge it, had to shave it a little bit, needed to cut a bit off to get it to fit, but I mean, I feel like it's one of those rare things where you can honestly say that although it's not that complex, although it's not that exceptional in terms of appearance or extra features on top of what you might otherwise see on a Terminator, it still just looks like its very own model. There is no other Terminator that, you might see one with the lightning claws and go, oh, that looks similar, but it only ever looks similar. Nothing quite matches this guy. It's so good. Even if I do mess up the pronunciation of the name every single time. I always say Tyberos, but I've heard Tyberos a few times. I don't know which way round it is. I only know that the Red Wake is an insanely badass title, and the first name you can probably leave off. People will know who you mean if you say the Red Wake. Speaking of Terminators, this is one of my favourite Chaos Terminator models. So, World Eater's Terminator Lord Zufar, again, I wouldn't say it's massively over the top or hugely exceptional compared to other Chaos Terminators, but there is just something about the spread of iconography on this model that just makes it so interesting compared to just standard Chaos Terminators. The chains, the skulls, the World Eater's logo on the leg, the corn symbol on the chest. There's just little touches all over this guy, which admittedly you can see a little bit better in the resin. That looks like a low-res picture of a resin cast of the guy. I don't think he actually looks that bad. In fact, no, I know he doesn't look that bad because I have this model somewhere. I should dig it out. Also, again, badass helmet on this dude. Amazing helmet. They should just advertise the helmet by itself. It looks awesome. It looks so good. Again, just one of those models that's, although it's similar to others, has a presence, an attitude of its very own. Now, we can't talk Forge World smaller miniatures without looking at Horus Heresy stuff. Now, the thing is, I'm not going to do Primarchs because I'm actually going to do a separate video for Primarchs, essentially ranking the models from best to worst, which I'm sure will go down fantastically. Can't wait to read the comments on that. That's going to go great. But there are a couple of standout models from the character range, which, I'll be honest, I've narrowed it down to my 3 absolute favourites, and they're all good, but I mean, you can't say that Sevatar is not one of the best models in the character series range for the Horus Heresy. It's just look at the guy, look at him. That is hands down the best Night Lords model outside of Kurz. I mean, Kurz, his model is, I would argue, perfect for that character, but Sevatar, again, there is so much going for this model. There is just so much going for it. It looks purposeful, it looks grim, it looks terrifying. That is just a hands-down murderer in power armour. And I think even if you didn't have, even if you hadn't read anything about Sevatar, you can look at this model and know instantly. You don't even need to know anything about the Night Lords. You don't need to know anything about the Horus Heresy as a whole. You can just look at this model and immediately know that that guy is horrendously bad news, and you do not want to go anywhere near him. It's one of those things where I think they've absolutely not just nailed the personality, but put it into every single ounce of the model. You know his history just by looking at him. And you could say, well, yeah, he's covered in skin and bones. Obviously, you're going to know. But I don't think it's quite that simple. I think things like stances, I think things like, weapons, placement of trophies do a lot to really make someone stand out. I just think it's absolutely perfect. It is perfect for that character. I could not see Sevatar have a model that wasn't that. They nailed it that well. Now, this guy, Zardu Lyak and the Blade Slaves, this is hands down one of my favourite things that Forge World has ever done. I keep distinguishing, but really it's all the same company. There is something about just this model and his entourage that is properly scary. I think it's kind of easy sometimes to forget that the word bearers are pretty damn terrifying in their own right. This is just one of the best Horus Heresy models by far. There is so much purpose and personality. There is no mistaking what this guy is as soon as you see him. You know that he's some sort of dark sorcerer. You know that human sacrifice is right up there straight away. You know, you'd be shocked if someone told you he hadn't sacrificed a few people in his time. You'd be like, sure, this guy, get lost. Of course he has. The parchments, the writing, the helm is, I think, absolutely fantastic. I really wish I could get hold of just the helm by itself, because I would love to. There's so many things I would make with. In fact, in fairness, quite a bit off this character. But the thing is, £60 is a lot to spend for a box of bits. Although, yeah, having told you what I did to make my chapter master earlier, maybe it's not. But yeah, by himself, this would be like an exceptionally good model. But he's not by himself. You've got the Blade Slaves as well. And to be honest, I'm including the Galvorback in with these Blade Slaves because they are fairly similar. Not the same, obviously, but they are fairly similar. They have a very similar aesthetic going on, and the Galvorback are right up there as well. But I mean, just look at this thing. Look at it. This has a style that is so different to anything available on the Games Workshop site. Like the Greater Possessed, they look good. I do like them. But they're just still not quite there with these guys. They just look so good. The mix of flesh and shattered armour, the growths like punching out of the ceramite, it's so well done. The weapon is the most gnarly, nasty thing I think is on a model, full stop. Like that weird bone saw thing that is actually it just his arm. I can't think of another weapon where you look at it and go, that looks like it wasn't just... Like, it's not just painful to get hit by that, it's painful for the guy to have it in the first place. There's just so much, attitude and detail on this thing. And there's two of them, that's the thing. He looks absolutely great, but the other one looks just as good. They both look amazing. They both just embody that kind of demonic possession side of the word bearers at that time. They absolutely nailed the look of it, and this is one of those kits where every single time I have just a bit of extra hobby budget, I'm like, no, I can't justify it because I'm never going to ever use them. But just look at these things. Look at them. They're just so good. They're just so good. Oh, my self-control just collapses badly. There is one other model that I like as much as these. I would argue that, for me, these are my favourite of the character series. Excluding the Primarchs, which, as I said, will be its own video. These, and by extension the Galvorback, because who doesn't love those? They look amazing as well. There's only one model that I think competes for me. And it is, weirdly, something completely different. Totally different. Janeshia Crowl is a fantastic model. It's, again, one of those things where I don't think you could represent that character better in model form than this. And it has, for me, such an old look, in a way. It doesn't look like a modern, sci-fi warrior. It looks very fantasy. But that's one of the things I like so much about it. Admittedly, the paint job does help, because I feel like the paint job on this is really, really nice. But again, it's just so well done. So well done. This is one of those models where I feel like the simpler the paint job, the better. Because it doesn't actually need that much. It doesn't need a huge amount of, excessive, over-the-top colour work or anything. Just a bit of silver, a bit of gold. maybe a very light wash, and you're there for the armor. It doesn't need to be complex, because this is a model that feels like the character is all business, and it really, really shows. The detail on the hearth helm as well is something that I always really like. It'd be very easy to make it look like weird, or kind of, I guess, a little bit underdone, but it's not. It suits the rest of the armor absolutely perfectly. And there is still a lot of detail on it. It's like, it's kind of complex, but not, this armor, which is one of the things I like so much about it. There is an honourable mention as well. So of all of the things we've looked at, Zardu Layak and the Blade Slaves and Janeshia Crowl are my two absolute favourites. But there is an honourable mention to a lad from Age of Sigmar, of all things. Possibly because it's just one of the most interesting, unique things that I think Forge World has done, which is this lad. Admittedly, his name isn't great, Shar'tor the Executioner. Shart has its own meaning, and it's nothing to do with this guy, and I'm just not convinced about the name, personally. But I don't know whether it's the paint job especially that maybe makes it look so different, but this is just one of those models that I feel like nothing else quite looks like it. It has a feel of its very, very own, and whilst you do want stuff in any franchise to be coherent and to fit properly, you don't want anything that stands out massively. Sometimes having something that does stand out can really, I don't know, it can kind of provide almost like fresh perspective on stuff. It's like an anchor for everything else, and this guy just looks so unique. I couldn't even tell you what he is. I mean, I've looked a couple of times. I always forget what his species is. In a way, it just doesn't matter. It's one of those things where I feel like the sculpt overall is really nicely done. There's some excellent detail going on. There's some, the weapons are a bit mad, but what else would you expect? The weird blade arm thing, I'm on board for that. The fact that it very much looks like the hood, kind of like the neck cover, seems to have a little bit of riveting going on into the flesh there, which is always nice to see. It's just so unique. I feel like it's a properly unique model. There's nothing else that really looks like this. It stands out in the best possible way. I've got no idea how popular this model is, I'll be honest. I don't know if I've ever seen one in person. I don't think I know anyone who's bought one either, to be fair. But this is one of those things where every time I go on Forge World to have a mooch around and decide what mistake to make next, I'm always drawn to this just because of how totally different it is to pretty much everything else. It's just really, really nicely done. I wouldn't mind seeing more of this kind of thing. More kind of, I wouldn't say exploratory, but stuff that pushes things a little more than perhaps you would expect. Things that are a bit more unique, a bit more different. Because if that's the result every time, then that'd be grand. Even if it's only the result like once every 3 times. Still worth it, I reckon. Really nice model. Okay, that is essentially my favourite. I didn't actually count how many of these there were. I think there's 10, efficiently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 it is. Essentially my 10 favourite smaller models from Forge World that aren't just giant tanks and Netcraft, because they do exist, it turns out. Forge World do smaller models. Who'd have thought it? Let me know what your favourites are in the comments down below. Are there any that I've picked that you are absolutely 100% on board for, that you have a similar issue of, you just want it now, even if you're never going to use it? Or is there anything that you've seen that you've gone, actually, no, I don't like that one very much? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all of that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to. There is an affiliate link in the description down below that you can't get Forge World stuff from, but you can get 40k stuff from, and it's cheaper than if you bought it from Games Workshop, so everyone's a winner. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.